The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Warp drive bends space. Transporters convert matter to energy and back again. Even the most exotic phenomena follow predictable patterns. But what happens when two impossibilities collide in a cascade of energy that defies every sensor reading, every scientific model, every rational explanation the Federation has compiled? The USS Enterprise was conducting routine dilithium surveys in Sector 098 when Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott detected an anomaly that would rewrite everything Starfleet knew about the boundaries between realities. His experimental transporter enhancement had synchronized with something else, something that pulsed with energy signatures reading simultaneously as matter, antimatter, and a third state that shouldn't exist. "Captain, you'd better see this." Scott's voice carried worry over the intercom. On the bridge, Captain James T. Kirk exchanged glances with his first officer. Spock's eyebrow arched with that particular expression, meaning the universe had become fascinating and dangerous in equal measure. Kirk stabbed the comm button. "On our way, Scotty." The transporter room thrummed with barely contained power. Scott stood at his console, hands moving across controls with desperate precision, trying to hold back a tidal wave with equations. The transporter pad crackled with energy, not the familiar golden shimmer, but something darker, shot through with crimson lightning that burned holes in reality. "I can't shut it down, sir," Scott said, sweat beading on his forehead. "Something on the other side is forcing the connection open. There's intelligence behind it." "Two distinct energy signatures," Spock reported, tricorder before him. "One biological, enhanced beyond human norms. The second—" He paused. "The second registers as a sentient being composed of solidified cosmic energy. These readings are theoretically impossible." "I'm getting tired of the impossible showing up on my ship," Kirk muttered. "Scotty, can you stabilize it? I can try to guide them through, but we don't know what we're bringing aboard." The decision took Kirk less than a second. Whatever was coming through was coming regardless. Better to have some control. "Do it! Security to Transporter Room 1!" Reality screamed. The crimson lightning intensified, and the air tore. Two figures materialized. Or rather, were forced into existence, ripped from one universe and thrust violently into another. The first figure dropped to one knee, steadying himself against the deck. He wore a suit of black metal that absorbed light, etched with silver patterns suggesting both circuitry and ancient tribal art. A mask covered his face, sleek, feline, with white eyes glowing with restrained intensity. Every line spoke of coiled strength, a warrior's bearing Kirk recognized instantly. The second figure simply stood, and in that act communicated absolute dominion. He towered nearly 7 feet tall, his body carved from living stone. Gray skin cracked with lines of red energy pulsing like molten veins. He wore armor of dark metal and a flowing cape that moved in a wind existing only for him. But his eyes commanded attention, burning red, filled with intelligence as old as stars and pitiless as the void between them. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of civilizations ground to dust. "Where have you brought me, mortal?" The question was directed at the first figure, who rose with fluid grace. "I brought you nowhere, tyrant. Your Omega effect tore open a rift between dimensions. I followed to ensure you threaten no other worlds." "Omega effect?" Spock's tricorder chirped urgently. "Captain, I'm detecting residual energy consistent with selective atomic manipulation." "The power required exceeds our ship's entire output by orders of magnitude." The massive figure turned his burning gaze on Spock. "Your instrument attempts to measure godhood. Futile." Those eyes fixed on Kirk. "I am Darkseid, Lord of Apokolips. Sovereign of the universe I departed and soon of this one. You will kneel, or be remade into something that kneels willingly." Kirk had faced Klingon, Romulans, godlike beings before. He recognized a conqueror and had never met one he couldn't outthink. "I'm Captain James T. Kirk of the Federation Starship Enterprise. This is Federation space, and we don't kneel to anyone. You're both guests aboard my ship, which means you follow my rules. Starting with no threats against my crew." The masked warrior shifted, placing himself between Darkseid and the Enterprise officers. A protector's instinct. "I am Chala, son of Chaka, king of Wakanda and protector of my people." He touched controls on his neck, and the mask retracted, revealing a strong face with dark skin, intelligent eyes, and the bearing of command. "Captain Kirk, I apologize for this intrusion. I pursued this creature through the barrier because I've witnessed what he does to civilizations he conquers. Your ship, your people, all are in danger as long as he draws breath." "How dramatic," Darkseid said with amusement. "Tell me, king of a nation I have never heard of, where is your kingdom now?" "You are alone, separated from everything you knew." He gestured broadly. "Darkseid is." Chala's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he turned to Kirk. "Captain, I know you have no reason to trust me. But I'm asking you to believe that being represents a threat to every living thing in your galaxy. He conquers. He enslaves. He breaks civilizations to his will. If he's regaining his strength, you have very little time." Kirk studied both figures. Chala presented himself as an ally, but was clearly a warrior king from an unknown culture, wearing impossible technology. Darkseid made no pretense of friendship, almost refreshing in its honesty, but his presence felt like weight pressing on reality. "Mr. Spock, can we contain either of them?" "Unknown, Captain. Preliminary scans suggest ship's weapons would prove ineffective against the larger entity." "I like this one." Darkseid nodded towards Spock. "He understands the futility of resistance." His eyes blazed. "This ship, this Federation, insects discussing philosophy while a boot descends." The air crackled with crimson energy. Kirk's hand moved to his phaser. Chala's suit produced clawed gauntlets humming with power. Spock's tricorder shrieked a warning 1 second too late. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. Darkseid's eyes flared, twin beams carving through the bulkhead like paper. "That was a warning." The Omega effect can erase you from existence or rewrite you into something useful. Chala moved between Darkseid and Kirk's crew in impossible speed. "You'll go through me first." Kirk made his decision. He'd faced false gods, but this time had someone who'd fought this particular god and survived. "Mr. Spock, escort our guests to quarters under guard." "Chala, you're with me?" He locked eyes with Darkseid. "Testing my crew's patience won't end well. I've dealt with beings who thought they were gods." "Indeed," Darkseid said. "I look forward to watching you learn the difference between pretenders and the genuine article. I will accept your hospitality. For now." As security escorted Darkseid away, Kirk turned to Chala. "Your quarters or mine?" "I suspect, Captain, we have much to discuss. Starting with why your Federation allows such a being to simply walk your corridors. We don't know what he is yet. Until we do, I'd prefer to keep him where we can monitor him." Kirk gestured toward the door. "But you're right, we need answers. You're going to provide them." Neither noticed the faint crimson residue on the pad where Darkseid had stood. A stain already spreading through the ship's systems. Kirk's quarters felt smaller with Chala standing in them. The warrior king moved with controlled precision, taking in every detail: the Spartan furnishings, the star charts on the view screen, the chess set mid-game on the desk. His eyes lingered on the books, actual physical books that Kirk kept despite the efficiency of computer archives. "You surround yourself with history," Chala observed, running a finger along the spine of a volume on Earth's Age of Exploration. "Interesting choice for a man who travels among the stars. Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it," Kirk said, pouring 2 glasses of Saurian brandy. He offered one to Chala. "Though I'm guessing you didn't come here to discuss my reading habits." Chala accepted the glass but didn't drink. "In my culture, sharing drink requires trust." "I don't yet know if we have that, Captain." Fair enough. Kirk took a seat, gesturing for Chala to do the same. Then let's build it. Starting with the truth. Who are you really, and what is Darkseid? Chala remained standing, looking out at the stars streaming past. My nation, Wakanda, has existed hidden from the world for centuries. We possess technology far beyond what the outside world knows, powered by a metal called Vibranium, a meteor that fell to Earth millennia ago. As king and protector, I serve both as warrior and diplomat, scientist and guardian. His jaw tightened. But that was in my universe. Here, I don't even know if Wakanda exists. Spock's preliminary analysis suggests you came from a parallel dimension, Kirk said carefully. The energy signatures indicate a stable reality with different physical constants. Similar, but not identical. Then everything I knew, everyone I swore to protect, they're beyond my reach. Chala's voice remained steady, but Kirk recognized the tone. He'd heard it before, from crew members who'd lost everything to spatial anomalies or temporal disasters. But wallowing serves no purpose. Darkseid is here, and that makes this universe my responsibility. Tell me about him. Chala turned from the window, and his expression carried the weight of nightmares witnessed. Darkseid is a new god, an entity of cosmic power from a planet called Apokolips. In my dimension, he commands armies that span star systems. His Omega effect, those crimson beams you saw, can disintegrate matter, transmute living beings into servants of his will, or simply erase targets from existence. But his true weapon is more insidious. Go on. He doesn't merely conquer. He breaks civilizations psychologically, turning them into extensions of himself. Those who resist are destroyed. Those who submit are remade, their minds rewritten to worship him as their god. He seeks something called the anti-life equation, a mathematical proof that free will is meaningless. If he finds it, he believes he can dominate all sentient life across every reality. Kirk set down his glass. He'd faced the Klingon desire for glory through conquest, the Romulan strategic expansion, even entities like Apollo who demanded worship. But this was different. You're describing a threat to the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. Yes. And he's weaker here than he was in our dimension. I felt it when we materialized. The dimensional crossing strained him. But weakness is relative when discussing a being who can level cities with a glance. Chala finally sat, leaning forward intently. Captain Kirk, I need to understand your Federation. In my world, I've dealt with governments that speak of peace while harboring colonial ambitions. I've seen the United Nations debate while people suffer. What makes your Federation different? The question was a test, Kirk realized. Chala was evaluating whether Starfleet could be trusted or was simply another power structure waiting to exploit. The Federation was founded on the principle that infinite diversity and infinite combinations creates strength. We explore. We seek out new life and civilizations, not to conquer but to understand. We have a prime directive, non-interference with less advanced cultures. It's not perfect, and we struggle with it constantly, but it guides us. A noble ideal, Chala said. But ideals shatter when confronted with existential threats. What happens when Darkseid begins subjugating planets in your Federation? Will you maintain non-interference when he turns your principles into weapons against you? We'll find a way to stop him that doesn't compromise who we are. Will you? Chala's challenge was direct. Because in my experience, Captain, threats like Darkseid don't respond to diplomacy. They respect only power and strategy. You said you don't kneel to anyone, but words mean nothing if you lack the means to enforce them. The door chimed, saving Kirk from having to answer. Come. Spock entered, tricorder in hand, his expression even more controlled than usual, which meant he'd discovered something significant. Captain, I must speak with you immediately. In private. Chala stood. I understand. I'll return to quarters, assuming you're providing me some? Deck 5, Section 7, Kirk said. And Chala? I meant what I said about finding a way. We will stop him. I hope you're right, Captain. Because if you're wrong, this universe will burn, and your Federation will be the kindling. After Chala departed, Kirk turned to Spock. What did you find? Two matters of immediate concern. First, analysis of King Chala's Vibranium suit reveals properties that defy conventional physics. The metal absorbs kinetic energy, dissipates heat beyond theoretical limits, and exhibits quantum properties suggesting it exists partially out of phase with normal matter. Captain, this material could revolutionize Federation technology, or become the most dangerous weapon we've ever encountered. And the second matter? Spock's expression darkened imperceptibly. Darkseid is not contained. The energy he's emitting is infiltrating our ship's systems through the power grid. It's subtle, designed to evade detection, but I believe he's mapping our entire vessel, weapons, engines, crew complement, everything. He's planning something. Kirk moved to the comm panel. Kirk to security. Status on our guest? He's in his quarters, Captain. Hasn't moved or made any demands. Just standing there. It's unsettling, sir. Maintain vigilance. Kirk out. He looked at Spock. Recommendations? We are, as Dr. McCoy might say, between a rock and a hard place. We have two extremely powerful entities aboard, one claiming to be our ally, the other openly threatening. We lack the capability to forcibly contain either, and attempting to do so might trigger exactly the confrontation we wish to avoid. But doing nothing allows Darkseid to continue whatever he's planning. Precisely. However, I would point out that King Chala has fought Darkseid before and survived. His tactical knowledge could prove invaluable. Kirk paced, mind racing through scenarios. Chala was right about one thing. The Federation's ideals worked beautifully when dealing with rational actors who could be reasoned with or deterred. But Darkseid wasn't rational in any sense Kirk understood. He was a force of nature wrapped in malevolent intelligence. Get McCoy and Scotty together with Chala, Kirk decided. I want a full analysis of that Vibranium and what it's capable of. If it's the key to stopping Darkseid, we need to understand it completely. And Spock? Start working on a way to purge Darkseid's energy from our systems. If he's studying us, let's return the favor. Captain, there is one additional consideration. Spock paused, choosing his words carefully. In our encounters with godlike entities, the Metrons, Trelane, even Apollo, we discovered that their power often had limits or sources that could be identified and exploited. If Darkseid's abilities truly stem from these new god energies, there may be a scientific explanation we can discover and exploit. Kirk smiled grimly. Find it. Because Chala was right about something else. Words won't stop Darkseid. We need power and strategy. And we need them before he decides our usefulness has expired. As Spock departed to begin his analysis, Kirk returned to the window, watching stars stream past. Somewhere out there, Darkseid was planning his next move. The question was whether the Federation's principles could survive the coming storm, or whether Kirk would be forced to compromise everything he believed in to save the galaxy. In the silence of his quarters, James T. Kirk made a promise to himself. He would find a third option. He always did. But deep in the bowels of the Enterprise, in quarters under constant surveillance, Darkseid smiled his terrible smile. The insects were predictable, studying him as if knowledge could protect them. They would learn, as countless civilizations before them had learned, that understanding your doom didn't prevent it. It merely allowed you to see it coming. The planet designated Gamma Trianguli 6 hung in the viewscreen like a jewel against velvet darkness. Lush green continents, azure oceans, white clouds swirling in peaceful patterns. Sensors indicated a pre-industrial civilization of approximately 50 million humanoids living in agrarian communities, technologically equivalent to Earth's Bronze Age. They had simple tools, basic agriculture, and no concept that stars were distant suns or that beings from those stars might visit them. They were, in every sense that mattered to the Federation, protected by the Prime Directive. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the surface. Uhura reported, her fingers dancing across her communications console. Audio only, and the language it's translating, but the phrasing is strange. They're calling for help against the stone god who fell from the sky. Kirk's blood went cold. When did this transmission begin? 17 minutes ago, sir. It's being broadcast on multiple frequencies, increasingly desperate. Spock, scan the planet. Locate Darkseid. The Vulcan's hands moved across his science station with controlled urgency. I am detecting the same energy signature we recorded during his arrival, emanating from coordinates in the northern hemisphere. Captain, there is also evidence of significant thermal damage in a radius of approximately 3 kilometers around his position. Structures destroyed, atmospheric ionization consistent with intense heat weapons. He's already started, Chalice said quietly from where he stood near the command chair. Kirk had brought him to the bridge over McCoy's objections, reasoning that they needed his expertise more than they needed to maintain standard protocol. The Wakandan king wore his full suit now, the vibranium gleaming under the bridge lights, mask retracted. This is what he does. Find a primitive world, demonstrate power, begin the subjugation. By the time you arrive, Captain, half the population will already worship him out of fear. Scotty, can we beam him back aboard? Kirk demanded. From engineering, Scott's voice carried frustration. Negative, Captain. Whatever energy he's putting out is scrambling our transporter lock. I'd need to modify the pattern buffers, and even then I couldn't guarantee we'd get him instead of a pile of disconnected molecules. Kirk slammed his fist against the armrest. This was exactly the scenario the Prime Directive was designed to prevent, outside interference with the developing culture. Except this interference wasn't the Federation's. It was a genocidal tyrant who'd already violated every principle Kirk held sacred. The question was whether stopping Darkseid justified Kirk violating those same principles himself. We have to go down there, Chala said, and Kirk heard the barely restrained fury in his voice. Every moment we debate, people die. The Prime Directive forbids. Your Prime Directive is already broken. Chala's eyes blazed. Darkseid has contaminated their culture, shown them technology and power beyond their comprehension. You can hide behind your rules, Captain, or you can save lives. Choose. Mr. Spock? Kirk looked to his first officer, needing the Vulcan's logical perspective. Spock's expression was troubled. The king is correct that the cultural contamination has already occurred. However, our intervention would compound the violation. We would be choosing to interfere because another party interfered first, a dangerous precedent. Yet, he paused, meeting Kirk's eyes. Logic also suggests that allowing Darkseid to establish a stronghold on this planet poses a far greater long-term threat to the Federation and the galaxy at large. We may be facing a scenario where all choices violate our principles. We must select the least destructive option. Another transmission crackled through the speakers, and this time Kirk heard the screams beneath the words, the terror of people watching their world end. He'd sworn an oath to protect life, to explore and defend. The Prime Directive existed to prevent the Federation from becoming conquerors. But what good were principles if he hid behind them while innocents died? Uhura, open a channel to Darkseid. Channel open, Captain? Kirk kept his voice steady, knowing this being would hear any weakness. Darkseid, this is Captain Kirk of the USS Enterprise. You are in violation of Federation law and the sovereignty of this planet. Remove yourself immediately, or we will remove you by force. The view screen flickered, and suddenly Darkseid's face filled it, those burning red eyes staring directly at Kirk with amusement and contempt in equal measure. Behind him, Kirk could see native structures burning, people kneeling in terror. Captain Kirk. How predictable that you would threaten force you do not possess. Darkseid's voice rumbled like continents grinding together. I have claimed this world as the first holding of my new empire. These people now understand their proper place, on their knees before their betters. You may join them, or you may watch from orbit as I reshape this civilization into something useful. These people have the right to develop on their own, free from outside interference. Rights? Darkseid's laugh was terrible. Rights are fiction the weak create to pretend their weakness is virtue. I offer these primitives purpose, structure, the opportunity to serve something greater than their small lives. They will build monuments to my glory, spread word of Darkseid across this planet, and when they are ready, they will become soldiers in my army. I am saving them from meaningless existence. Chala stepped forward, his voice cutting through Darkseid's monologue. You're murdering them, tyrant. Just as you murdered billions in my dimension. But this time, you won't succeed. Ah, the Wakandan king. Tell me, Chala, how many of your precious people did you save when I tore open the dimensional barrier? How many followed you here? Darkseid's smile was cruel. You are alone, separated from everything that gave you strength. Your vibranium suit is impressive, but you have no nation to defend, no subjects to rule. You are nothing. Kirk saw Chala's hands clench, saw the rage building behind those controlled eyes. He put a hand on the king's shoulder, a warning and a promise both. Chala isn't alone. He has the Federation now. Does he? Darkseid leaned forward, and Kirk felt the weight of that gaze even through a view screen. Then prove it, Captain. Beam down your warriors. Violate your precious Prime Directive. Show these primitives that you are willing to wage war on their soil to stop me. Demonstrate that the Federation is simply another empire with prettier words. The new god spread his arms wide. I will be waiting. Darkseid welcomes your hypocrisy. The transmission cut out. Silence filled the bridge, broken only by the background hum of ship's systems and another distant scream from the planet below. Kirk stood frozen, feeling the weight of every eye on him. His crew waiting for orders, Chala radiating barely controlled fury, Spock's logical calm masking concern. McCoy's voice came from his medical station, uncharacteristically subdued. Jim, we can't just leave those people down there. And we can't become the very thing the Prime Directive was designed to prevent. Kirk shot back. If we go down there, guns blazing, we're telling every pre-warp civilization in the galaxy that the Federation will interfere whenever we decide our reasons are good enough. But he's already interfering. McCoy's frustration boiled over. Damn it, Jim, sometimes you have to break a rule to save a life. Gentlemen. Spock's calm voice cut through the rising tension. May I suggest a compromise? We do not beam down an armed security force to engage Darkseid directly. Instead, we send a small diplomatic team to attempt negotiation while simultaneously evacuating as many natives as possible to safe zones away from Darkseid's immediate sphere of influence. We minimize our visibility, document the cultural contamination Darkseid has already caused, and if negotiation fails, we will have better tactical intelligence for any necessary intervention. That's still interference, Kirk said, but he was already calculating. Already planning. Yes, Spock acknowledged. But it is measured interference, designed to minimize further damage rather than maximize our presence. The Prime Directive is not a suicide pact, Captain. It is a guideline to prevent exploitation. Darkseid is the exploiter. We would be mitigating his damage. Chala shook his head. You're trying to fight a forest fire with words and careful strategy. Darkseid doesn't negotiate. He conquers. Every moment you spend debating is another moment he entrenches himself, another group of people twisted to his service. I've seen this before. He'll turn their fear into worship, their desperation into loyalty. Soon they won't want to be saved. Then we'll have to move fast. Kirk made his decision, knowing he'd be defending it to Starfleet Command for months regardless of the outcome. Mr. Spock, Chala, Dr. McCoy, you're with me. Security team armed with phasers set to heavy stun. We beam down, we assess the situation, and we do everything possible to minimize our footprint while getting those people away from Darkseid. And when he attacks us? Chala asked. Because he will. Kirk met the king's eyes, saw the warrior behind the diplomat. Then we defend ourselves. But we do it smart, not just strong. Spock, coordinate with Scotty. I want options for disrupting Darkseid's energy signature. Chala, you've fought him before. What's his weakness? His arrogance, Chala said immediately. He believes himself invincible, which means he doesn't adapt quickly to unexpected tactics. In my world, we learn to use precision against his power. Strike at what he values, not at him directly. Disrupt his plans, undermine his authority, make him react instead of act. Then that's what we'll do. Kirk turned to Uhura. Keep this channel monitored. If things go wrong down there, I want the Enterprise ready to provide support. He looked at his assembled team: Vulcan logic, human compassion, Wakandan warrior skill. Against a god. Let's show Darkseid what the Federation really stands for. As they headed to the transporter room, Kirk couldn't shake the feeling that whatever happened on that planet would define not just this mission, but the Federation's soul itself. The transporter beam deposited them in the shadow of what had once been a temple. Now it was rubble, carved stone blocks scattered like a child's toys, ancient murals depicting agricultural gods cracked and blackened by heat. The air tasted of smoke and ozone, and Kirk's tricorder registered atmospheric ionization levels that would cause respiratory problems for the natives within hours. 3 security officers materialized behind them, phasers drawn but pointed down in a non-threatening stance. Chala's mask had deployed during transport, and he moved immediately to the perimeter, scanning the ruins with the practiced efficiency of a warrior who'd walked through too many devastated cities. Life signs? Kirk asked Spock quietly. Approximately 200 humanoids within 500 meters, clustered in groups. Elevated heart rates, stress hormones. They are terrified. Darkseid's energy signature is 300 meters north, stationary. Spock's tricorder chirped. Captain, I am also detecting structural modifications to several buildings in that direction. Crude but deliberate. He is already reshaping their architecture to his specifications. McCoy knelt beside a piece of rubble, running his medical scanner over dark stains. Jim, this is blood. Recent. And these burn patterns. He looked up, his face pale. Whatever hit these people, it didn't just kill them. It vaporized them at a molecular level. The Omega effect, Chala said, his voice hollow behind the mask. He's making examples. Show them what happens to those who resist, and the rest fall in line. He pointed to scorch marks arranged in a circle around what had been the temple's central plaza. See the pattern? He stood in the center and killed everyone around him simultaneously. Not because they attacked, because they needed to witness his power. A sound reached them, chanting, rhythmic and desperate. Kirk gestured for the team to move carefully toward it, using the ruins for cover. As they approached, the words became clearer, translated by their universal communicators into something chillingly familiar. Darkseid is. Darkseid is. Darkseid is. They reached a vantage point overlooking the plaza, and Kirk felt his stomach turn. Hundreds of natives, humanoid, brown-skinned, wearing simple robes now torn and stained, knelt in perfect rows before a raised platform. Darkseid stood there like a monument to tyranny, arms crossed, surveying his new subjects with satisfaction. Several of the natives' leaders stood on the platform beside him, their faces blank, their eyes vacant. Controlled. He's already started the conditioning, Chala hissed. Those leaders, their minds have been rewritten. They'll enforce his will now, believing they're serving their people's best interests. Spock's tricorder readings confirmed it. Neurological patterns show severe alteration in the frontal cortex and limbic system. Whatever he did to them, it was not merely intimidation. He has fundamentally changed how their brains process reality and authority. Can it be reversed? Kirk asked McCoy. I'd need to examine one of them, but Jim, this kind of neurological rewriting? Even if we could reverse it, the trauma. McCoy shook his head. They might not survive the restoration of their original personalities. Darkseid's voice boomed across the plaza, and the chanting ceased immediately. You have witnessed my power. You have seen the fate of those who defy the inevitable. Now you will demonstrate your loyalty. Bring forward those who still harbor doubt. Kirk watched in horror as the control leaders moved through the kneeling crowds, pulling individuals forward. A woman clutching a child. An elderly man who'd been whispering to his neighbors. A young warrior whose hand had strayed too close to the primitive spear at his belt. We have to stop this, McCoy said urgently. Not yet. Chala's hand on McCoy's shoulder was gentle but firm. If we reveal ourselves now, Darkseid will kill everyone here to prove he can. We need a better angle. The king is correct, Spock said. However, I am detecting something curious. Darkseid's energy output has decreased by approximately 15% since our last sensor sweep. The dimensional crossing and his subsequent displays of power are taxing him more than he wishes to reveal. Kirk seized on that information. He's weaker here, and he knows it. That's why he's using psychology and fear instead of just vaporizing the whole planet. He needs these people functional to serve as his power base while he recovers. A plan began forming. Spock, can you isolate the frequency of his energy signature? Already done, Captain? I believe I can configure our phasers to disrupt it, though I cannot predict how effective the disruption would be or how long it would last. Do it. And Chala, you said precision over power. What if we don't attack Darkseid directly? What if we undermine what he's building here? The Wakandan king's mask retracted, and Kirk saw the tactical mind behind the warrior's instincts engaging. You're thinking like a king now, Captain. Yes, he needs their worship, their obedience. If we can break the psychological hold, show these people he's not invincible. Chala nodded slowly. But it's dangerous. Once we start, he'll come for us directly. Then we better make it count. Kirk turned to his security team. You three, circle around to the far side of the plaza. When I give the signal, phasers on wide dispersal, target the platform supports, not Darkseid himself. Make it look like an accident, like structural failure. One of the security officers, a young lieutenant named Marsden, looked uncertain. Sir, the Prime Directive is already violated 6 ways from Sunday by the being on that platform. Kirk interrupted. We're not here to conquer. We're here to free these people from a conqueror. Now move. As the security team departed, McCoy pulled Kirk aside. Jim, even if we knock him down, embarrass him in front of these people, what's to stop him from just killing them all in retaliation? Me, Chala said quietly. Both men turned to look at him. When you destroy the platform, I'll engage him directly. Not to defeat him. I know my limitations here. But to draw his attention, to keep him focused on me instead of on them. It's what he wants anyway, to prove he's superior to the warrior who followed him across dimensions. That's suicide, McCoy said flatly. No, Doctor. It's a calculated risk. Chala's hand went to his chest, and Kirk noticed for the first time the faint purple glow emanating from beneath the vibranium weave. My suit absorbs kinetic energy. Every hit I take makes me stronger, faster. I've fought gods before. Darkseid is powerful, but he's not invincible. Especially not here, weakened as he is. Spock finished his phaser modifications and handed one to Kirk, another to Chala. The disruption should last between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, depending on how much energy he diverts to compensating for it. Use that window wisely. Kirk accepted the weapon, feeling the weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders. They were about to violate Starfleet regulations, abandon the Prime Directive, and engage in combat with a being who'd destroyed civilizations. But looking at those kneeling people, hearing their forced chanting, watching Darkseid prepare to execute the doubtful, Kirk knew some lines couldn't be defended from behind regulations. Everyone clear on the plan? Kirk asked. Nods all around. Then let's remind a god that humans don't kneel. Not now. Not ever. Down in the plaza, Darkseid raised his hand, and the Omega effect began to glow in his eyes. The selected victims stood frozen, awaiting their fate, while their people chanted his name like a prayer. Kirk activated his communicator. Marsden, now! Phaser beams lanced across the plaza, striking the platform's stone supports with precisely calculated force. The ancient structure groaned, shifted, and began to collapse. Darkseid's eyes widened fractionally. Surprise, genuine surprise at being caught off guard, as the platform fell away beneath him. He didn't fall. Of course he didn't fall. He simply hung there in the air, supported by cosmic power, rage building in those terrible eyes as he searched for his attackers. And then Chala stepped out from cover, mask deployed, vibranium claws extended, and spoke words that echoed across the plaza with absolute conviction. Your reign ends here, tyrant. This world belongs to its people, not to you. And I will make you remember why you feared Wakanda. Kirk saw Darkseid's expression shift from rage to anticipation, like a predator spotting worthy prey. The new god descended slowly, his feet touching the rubble of his ruined platform, his full attention now locked on the Wakandan king. Finally, Darkseid said, and his smile promised violence. Something interesting. The Omega effect blazed to life, and the battle for Gamma Trianguli 6 began in earnest. The Omega beams carved through the air where Chala had stood a microsecond before. The Wakandan king moved with speed that defied human capability, his vibranium suit's kinetic energy systems propelling him in unpredictable vectors. Stone vaporized behind him, the ancient plaza floor turning to glass under the intense heat, but Chala kept moving, forcing Darkseid to track, to focus, to waste energy on a target that refused to be hit. Kirk used the distraction. McCoy, get those people out of here. Move them toward the tree line, away from the combat zone. The doctor didn't argue, rushing toward the kneeling natives who'd broken their chanting and now huddled in confusion and terror. The controlled leaders tried to stop him, their rewritten minds insisting that fleeing their god meant death, but McCoy's hyposprays of sedative handled that problem with practiced efficiency. Spock coordinated the security team, using their modified phasers to create barriers of superheated air and stone, funneling the fleeing natives away from danger. Captain, the disruption effect is working. Darkseid's energy output is fluctuating, he's compensating, which means he's diverting power from other systems. Kirk watched Chala engage Darkseid in close combat, and it was like watching physics have a nervous breakdown. The king's vibranium claws sparked against Darkseid's stone-like skin, each strike absorbed and redirected by the suit's energy systems. When Darkseid's massive fist connected, and it connected often, because even Chala's speed couldn't dodge everything, the vibranium absorbed the kinetic force, storing it, making the king faster and stronger with each exchange. But Darkseid was learning. Interesting metal, the new god rumbled, catching Chala's wrist mid-strike and lifting him off the ground. It absorbs impact, channels energy. Clever. But what happens when the impact isn't kinetic? His eyes blazed, and at point-blank range, the Omega effect couldn't miss. Chala screamed as molecular disruption energy washed over his suit. The vibranium held, barely, its quantum properties resisting the erasure effect, but Kirk saw scorch marks appearing, saw sections of the weave beginning to fail. Darkseid was adapting his attack, finding the frequency that could overcome vibranium's defenses. Spock, hit him with the disruption pulse. Now! The modified phaser beam struck Darkseid's back, and for the first time, the new god staggered. His grip on Chala loosened, the Omega effect sputtered, and the Wakandan king broke free, rolling away and coming up in a defensive crouch. Darkseid turned slowly to face Kirk and Spock, and his expression had shifted from anticipation to annoyance. So the insects have stingers after all. Admirable. Futile, but admirable. He moved impossibly fast for something so massive, closing the distance to Kirk in 3 strides. Kirk fired his phaser, but Darkseid swatted it aside like an insect, his hand wrapping around Kirk's throat and lifting him effortlessly into the air. You command a starship, lead warriors, speak of principles and directives, Darkseid said conversationally, as if he weren't slowly crushing Kirk's windpipe. Yet here you are, violating your own laws to oppose me. Do you see the hypocrisy? The weakness of your philosophy? Kirk couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, but his eyes met Darkseid's without fear. He'd been strangled by Klingon, choked by alien plants, suffocated in space. Pain was temporary, principles were forever. He wouldn't give this tyrant the satisfaction of seeing fear. Chala's vibranium claw caught Darkseid across the face, drawing a line of dark ichor that might have been blood. The new god dropped Kirk, who collapsed gasping, and turned his full attention back to the Wakandan. "You're beginning to irritate me, little king." "Good," Chala said, circling, his suit's energy systems glowing brighter with each absorbed impact. "Irritated enemies make mistakes." Spock helped Kirk to his feet while keeping his tricorder trained on Darkseid. "Captain, his energy signature is stabilizing. He's adapting to our disruption frequency faster than predicted. We have perhaps 60 seconds before the advantage is lost entirely." Kirk's throat burned, but he forced out words. "Then we use those 60 seconds. McCoy, status on the evacuation?" "About half clear, Jim." McCoy's voice came through the communicator. "But some of them don't want to leave. The conditioning is too strong. They think abandoning Darkseid means abandoning salvation." It was exactly what Chala had warned about. Darkseid didn't just conquer bodies. He conquered minds, twisted belief systems until resistance felt like suicide. These people had been broken psychologically in less than an hour. How many more worlds would fall the same way if they didn't stop him here? Kirk made a decision that would haunt him later. "Spock, full power to the ship's phasers. Target the plaza, everything within 50 meters of Darkseid's position." "On my mark." Spock's eyebrow rose. "Captain, that will destroy what remains of this settlement's central religious and governmental structures. The cultural impact is already catastrophic." Kirk grabbed Spock's shoulders, making the Vulcan meet his eyes. "Darkseid has turned their temple into his throne room, their leaders into puppets, their faith into a weapon. We're not destroying their culture, Spock. We're trying to save what's left of it." A pause, then Spock nodded. "Acknowledged. Targeting coordinates locked. Awaiting your command." Chala and Darkseid crashed through the remains of a building, trading blows that shattered stone and split earth. The Wakandan king was holding his own, but barely. His suit absorbed damage, but even vibranium had limits, and those limits were approaching fast. Sections of the weave sparked and smoked where the Omega effect had found purchase. "Chala!" Kirk shouted. 30 seconds. Get clear!" The king didn't acknowledge, too focused on survival. Darkseid's attacks were becoming more precise, more targeted. He'd stopped trying to overpower the vibranium and started exploiting the gaps between plates, the joints, the seams. Studying. Learning. Adapting. A massive backhand sent Chala flying into a stone wall hard enough to crater it. The king slumped, his suit's glow dimming as energy reserves depleted. Darkseid approached slowly, savoring the moment. "You fought well, Wakandan. Better than most. But this universe has the same fundamental truth as all universes. Power bows to greater power. You have reached your limit. I have not." He raised his hand, the Omega effect building to lethal intensity. Kirk activated his communicator. "Enterprise, fire now." Twin phaser beams lanced down from orbit, not at Darkseid directly. They'd learned that lesson, but at the ground beneath his feet, at the structures around him, at everything that could collapse and confine. The ancient plaza erupted in superheated plasma and pulverized stone. Darkseid vanished in a cloud of debris and dust. Chala rolled clear just in time, dragging himself behind cover as tons of rubble crashed down where he'd been lying. Kirk and Spock rushed to him, pulling him further from the devastation. "Did we get him?" McCoy appeared, medical tricorder already scanning Chala for injuries. "Negative," Spock reported, his own tricorder pointed at the settling dust cloud. "Energy signature still present, though partially obscured by debris. However, his power output has dropped another 20%. The orbital strike, while not directly damaging him, forced him to expend significant energy maintaining a defensive field. Chala's mask retracted, revealing a face bloodied but unbowed. He's weakening. Not enough to defeat, but enough to concern him. He'll retreat, consolidate, try a different approach. As if summoned by the prediction, Darkseid's voice boomed across the ruined plaza, emanating from everywhere and nowhere. Impressive tactics, Captain Kirk. You've earned a stay of execution, for yourselves and this world. But understand this, I am patient. I have conquered galaxies over millennia. This is one planet, one day, one small setback. You cannot guard every world. You cannot be everywhere. And when you're not watching, when your precious Federation's attention is elsewhere, I will return. And I will remember your interference. The dust clouds swirled, condensing, and when it cleared, Darkseid was gone. No transporter signature, no warp trail. He'd simply ceased to be in that location. Where did he go? Kirk demanded. Spock worked his tricorder frantically. Unknown. The energy signature dispersed across multiple vectors simultaneously, possibly a form of matter transmission we're unfamiliar with. He could be anywhere on the planet, anywhere in the system, or... Spock's expression grew grim. In warp space heading toward any number of targets. Kirk slammed his fist against the rubble. They'd won the battle but lost the war. Darkseid was loose in the galaxy, weakened but learning, adapting to this universe's rules while maintaining enough power to threaten entire civilizations. And the worst part was that he was right. The Federation couldn't protect every world simultaneously. The people, Chala said, struggling to his feet despite McCoy's protests. We saved some, but those who stayed, those whose minds he altered, what happens to them now? Kirk looked at the kneeling figures still visible through the smoke, still chanting weakly, still believing their salvation had just been driven away by outsiders. The Prime Directive was supposed to prevent exactly this kind of cultural contamination. But Darkseid had made that directive meaningless the moment he'd arrived. We document everything, Kirk said finally. We provide medical assistance to those who'll accept it. We try to deprogram the controlled leaders, and we leave behind monitoring stations to track Darkseid's influence. And we report this to Starfleet Command, because this isn't a problem the Enterprise can solve alone. And then? Chala asked. Kirk met the Wakandan king's eyes, seeing his own frustration reflected there. Then we hunt him. Because you're right about one thing, words won't stop Darkseid. But maybe precision, strategy, and the resources of the entire Federation can. The Enterprise wardroom felt smaller with Commander Kor present. The Klingon leaned back in his chair with the casual arrogance of a warrior who'd counted crew on a dozen worlds, his dark eyes studying Chala with predatory interest, while ignoring Kirk entirely. His D-7 battlecruiser, the Klothos, held position 3,000 kilometers off the Enterprise's starboard bow, close enough to be threatening, far enough to avoid immediate conflict. So, Kor said, his voice carrying the rough edges of Klingon phonetics even through the universal translator. This is the warrior who bloodied a god. Impressive armor. Wakandan, you called it? He pronounced the word carefully, tasting it. What manner of people forged such metal? Chala sat across from him, mask retracted, his expression carefully neutral. A people who learned long ago that isolation and strength go hand in hand. We defended our borders, developed our technology, and asked nothing from the outside world. Wise, Kor grunted approval. The Federation preaches diversity and cooperation, but true strength comes from within. Your Wakanda understands this. He shot Kirk a pointed look. Unlike these soft explorers who talk of peace while carrying weapons. We carry weapons because the galaxy isn't always peaceful, Kirk said evenly. Though we prefer not to use them. Which is why you're losing to this Darkseid. Kor leaned forward, his interest sharpening. My empire has heard rumors. A being of immense power, appearing on Federation borders, claiming worlds, breaking armies. The High Council is intrigued. Spock stood near the viewscreen, his hands clasped behind his back. Commander Kor, I trust you did not request this meeting merely to discuss philosophical differences regarding strength versus cooperation. What does the Klingon Empire want? Kor's smile was all teeth. Direct. I appreciate that in a Vulcan, you waste no time on the pretty words humans love so much. He pulled a data chip from his uniform and slid it across the table. 3 days ago, Darkseid made contact with the High Council. He offered technology, power, and alliance in exchange for military support in his conquest of this galaxy. He was quite persuasive. Kirk's blood ran cold. Darkseid allied with the Klingon Empire's military might, their warrior culture's ruthlessness, their fleet of battle cruisers. It would be unstoppable. And your answer? We told him we would consider his proposal. Kor's expression shifted, something almost like respect entering his eyes. But first, we wanted to meet the warriors who made a god bleed. We wanted to understand what we would be allying ourselves against, or with. Chala spoke before Kirk could. You're evaluating us. Deciding whether we're worthy enemies or weak prey. Yes, Kor said simply. The Klingon Empire respects strength above all else. Darkseid demonstrated considerable power in his communication. He destroyed one of our listening posts to prove his sincerity. But you, King of Wakanda, you fought him hand to hand and survived. That speaks to a different kind of strength. And if we don't measure up to your standards? Kirk asked. Kor shrugged. Then the Empire accepts Darkseid's offer. We gain access to Apokolipsian technology, and in exchange, we provide him with warriors and ships to accelerate his conquest. The Federation falls, we claim territory, and the galaxy learns that Klingon choose the winning side. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kirk had negotiated with Klingon before, knew their culture valued directness and martial prowess. Appealing to morality or ethics would accomplish nothing. Kor didn't care about the suffering Darkseid would cause. He cared about honor, victory, and the strength of the Empire. What would it take to convince you Darkseid is a false ally? Spock asked. Proof that he can be defeated, Kor said immediately. Show me that this God King has weaknesses, that he can be outmaneuvered or overpowered. Convince me that allying with the Federation against him serves Klingon interests better than joining his conquest. He looked directly at Chala. And I would hear it from the warrior who has already fought him, not from Starfleet diplomats spinning words. Chala met Kor's gaze without flinching. Darkseid can be beaten, but not through direct assault. He's weakened in this universe. The dimensional crossing strained him, and every display of power costs him more than he wants to admit. But he's also patient. He'll build his strength slowly, conquer worlds one at a time, and by the time anyone realizes the scope of the threat, it will be too late. You speak of strategy, not strength, Kor challenged. Strategy is strength, Chala countered. In Wakanda, our warriors train not just in combat but in tactics, in understanding enemies, in using their power against them. I've watched Darkseid fight. He's arrogant, he believes himself invincible, which means he doesn't adapt quickly to unexpected approaches. That's his weakness. Kor studied Chala for a long moment. The Empire values warriors who think as well as fight. Your Wakanda sounds like a nation that would earn Klingon respect. He stood, pacing to the view screen where stars streaked past. But respect doesn't win battles. Darkseid promises us dominion over Federation space. What does Kirk offer? Alliance, Kirk said. Combined strength against a common enemy. The Federation has resources, technology, and intelligence networks across the quadrant. Your empire has military power and warrior discipline. Together we would still be fighting a being who can vaporize starships with I-beams, Kor interrupted. Unless you have a weapon that can actually harm him. Kirk glanced at Chala, who gave the slightest nod. They'd discussed this possibility during the flight back from Gamma Trianguli 6. How much to reveal about Vibranium, whether it could become a bargaining chip. We have something better than a weapon, Kirk said carefully. We have knowledge of what can disrupt his power. During our engagement, we discovered frequencies that interfere with his energy signature, weaken his defenses. And King Chala's armor, the Vibranium metal. It resists the Omega effect in ways our standard materials cannot. Kor turned sharply. This metal. Can it be replicated? Weaponized? No, Chala said firmly. Vibranium is unique to my world, and I have a limited supply here. But its properties can be studied, and with Federation science combined with Klingon metallurgical expertise, perhaps we could develop alloys that approximate its defensive capabilities. It was a calculated risk. Offering technological cooperation to the Klingon violated several Federation protocols. But Kirk understood the game. Kor needed something tangible to bring back to the High Council, something that made opposing Darkseid more attractive than joining him. And in exchange for this cooperation? Kor asked. The Empire refuses Darkseid's alliance, Kirk said. Actively opposes his expansion into Klingon space. Shares intelligence on his movements and capabilities. And when the time comes for a final confrontation, you fight alongside us instead of against us. Kor laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You ask much, Kirk? The High Council does not take orders from Starfleet captains. I'm not ordering. I'm offering a path to glory. Kirk stood, walking to face Kor directly. Darkseid sees your empire as tools, warriors to be expended in his conquest, then discarded or controlled when their usefulness ends. He'll promise you everything, but tyrants don't share power. They tolerate allies only until those allies become inconvenient. And you know this how? Because I've studied history, Kirk said. Every conqueror follows the same pattern. Divide, subjugate, eliminate competition. Darkseid isn't offering partnership. He's offering temporary employment before eventual domination. Chala added his voice. In my dimension, Darkseid destroyed entire civilizations that allied with him once their strategic value diminished. The Klingon Empire values honor, correct? Where is the honor in serving a being who will enslave you the moment you're no longer useful? Kor considered this, his warrior's instincts warring with political calculation. The High Council will want more than words and promises. They will want proof of Darkseid's weakness, tangible evidence that opposing him serves the Empire better than joining him. Then help us find him, Kirk proposed. Your sensor networks cover regions we can't reach. Your intelligence operatives move through territories where Starfleet can't operate. Work with us to locate Darkseid's next target, and we'll demonstrate exactly how he can be countered. When the High Council sees an actual victory instead of theoretical cooperation, they'll make the right choice. Or they'll see failure and accept Darkseid's offer anyway, Kor said. But there was something in his tone, not agreement exactly, but consideration. Spock interjected with perfect timing. Commander, logic suggests that observing our tactics against Darkseid before committing the Empire to either alliance provides maximum strategic advantage with minimum risk. You lose nothing by watching how we handle the next engagement, Kor grunted. Vulcan logic had a way of cutting through Klingon bluster. Very well. The Klothos will maintain position near Federation space, monitoring communications. If Darkseid makes another move, we will observe. If you prove capable of actually harming him, I will recommend the High Council consider your alliance. He moved toward the door, then paused. But understand, if you fail, if this God King proves as unstoppable as he claims, the Empire will not go down fighting beside you. We will join the winning side and claim our share of the spoils. Understood, Kirk said. It was the best deal they were going to get. After Kor transported back to his ship, McCoy emerged from the adjacent observation room where he'd been monitoring. Well, that was cheerful. Now we've got Klingon judging our performance while we hunt a god. Not just judging, Spock corrected. Commander Kor's interest in vibranium and disruption frequencies suggests he's already calculating how to replicate our successes independent of Federation cooperation. Chala nodded slowly. He'll steal whatever technology he can, use it to strengthen the Empire, and only ally with us if it's more profitable than betraying us. Welcome to galactic politics, Kirk said tiredly. Starbase 12 had gone silent 14 hours ago. The massive orbital facility, home to over 3,000 Starfleet personnel and civilians, had simply stopped transmitting. No distress calls, no warnings, no explanations, just silence where constant chatter should have been. When the Enterprise arrived at maximum warp, they found the starbase intact but dark, its running lights extinguished, its defensive shields offline. Life signs? Kirk demanded from the command chair. Spock's fingers danced across his console, his expression growing progressively grimmer. Approximately 2,700 life signs detected. All humanoid. However, he paused, adjusting his sensors. Captain, the neurological patterns are abnormal. Uniform across all readings, identical brainwave frequencies, synchronized neural activity. It's as if the entire station's population is thinking as one. Chalice stood beside Kirk, his Vibranium suit fully deployed. Over the past week, he'd become an unofficial member of the bridge crew, his tactical insights proving invaluable. He's here. Or was recently. This is exactly what he did on Apokolips, turn populations into extensions of himself. We're receiving a transmission, Uhura reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. Audio and visual. Source is the Starbase Command Center. On screen. The view screen flickered to life, showing Starbase 12's operations hub. Officers stood at their stations in perfect stillness, their eyes vacant, their faces slack. And at the center of the room, seated in the commander's chair like a throne, sat Darkseid. Captain Kirk. King Chala. How predictable that you would respond to my invitation. Darkseid gestured to the controlled officers around him. I've been studying your Federation, learning its strengths and weaknesses. You build impressive structures, develop advanced technology, forge alliances across species. But your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. You care deeply for individuals. Kirk's hands clenched on the armrests. What have you done to them? I've given them purpose. Darkseid said calmly. Each person on this station now serves a higher calling. They maintain systems, operate machinery, perform tasks without complaint or hesitation. They're more efficient than they've ever been. Isn't that what your Starfleet values? Efficiency, order, the smooth operation of complex systems? They're slaves, Chala said, his voice cold with fury. You've stolen their free will. I've liberated them from doubt, from fear, from the burden of meaningless choice. Darkseid stood, and the controlled officers moved with him in perfect synchronization, a living demonstration of his power. In my dimension, I sought the anti-life equation, a mathematical proof that free will is an illusion. Here, in this simpler universe, I've discovered something more practical. Your transporter technology, your neural scanners, your medical databases, combined with new God science, they allow me to rewrite minds with precision your Dr. McCoy couldn't imagine. McCoy's voice came over the comm from sickbay. Jim, if he's integrated our technology with his abilities, deprogramming them could be impossible. The neural pathways might be irreversibly altered. Not might be, Doctor. Are. Darkseid smiled that terrible smile. These people will serve me for the rest of their lives, and through them, I will learn everything about the Federation. Fleet deployments, technological specifications, tactical doctrines, political vulnerabilities. By the time I'm finished analyzing what's in their minds, I'll know your civilization better than you know yourselves. Spock spoke quietly to Kirk. Captain, sensors indicate the Starbase power systems have been modified. The reactor output has increased by 40%. He's drawing energy directly from the station to restore his own power levels. The dimensional crossing weakened him, but he's found a way to compensate. Kirk's mind raced. They couldn't simply destroy the Starbase. 3,000 lives hung in the balance, even if those lives were currently enslaved. But leaving Darkseid in control meant handing him a wealth of intelligence and resources. Every moment they delayed, he grew stronger. What do you want, Darkseid? Kirk asked, knowing there had to be an endgame to this demonstration. A trade, the new god said. I want the Wakandan king and his vibranium suit. Chala has fought me twice now, survived twice, learned my patterns. He represents an unpredictable variable in my calculations. Surrender him to me, and I will release this station's population unharmed, their minds restored, their freedom returned. Absolutely not, Kirk said immediately. Then these people remain mine. Darkseid's eyes began to glow with crimson light. But perhaps you need additional motivation to reconsider. One of the controlled officers, a young ensign Kirk recognized from previous visits to Starbase 12, stepped forward. Darkseid placed a hand on her shoulder, and the Omega effect pulsed through his fingers into her body. The ensign screamed, her body convulsing as the energy rewrote her at a molecular level. When it stopped, she was different. Taller, stronger, her skin taking on a grayish hue, her eyes glowing faintly red. Behold the next stage, Darkseid announced. Not merely controlled minds, but enhanced bodies. I can transform your people into warriors of Apokolips, soldiers who combine human ingenuity with new god power. Imagine an army of 3,000 such beings, Captain. How many Federation worlds could resist? How long before your precious principles crumble in the face of overwhelming force? Chala moved toward the turbolift. I'm going over there. Kirk grabbed his arm. That's exactly what he wants. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, Chala said, pulling free gently but firmly. But 3,000 lives, Kirk. You can't sacrifice them to protect me, and I won't let you try. His mask retracted, and Kirk saw absolute determination in those eyes. In Wakanda, the king serves the people, not the other way around. If trading myself saves them, that's not a sacrifice, it's duty. He'll kill you or worse, turn you into one of those enhanced soldiers. McCoy protested over the calm. Perhaps. But he'll have to catch me first. Chala's smile was grim. And I have no intention of making it easy. Captain, I need a distraction, something to divide his attention while I infiltrate the starbase. Spock turned from his console. I may have a solution. The modified phasers we used on Gamma Trianguli 6 disrupted Darkseid's energy signature temporarily. If we amplified that disruption to station-wide levels, we could potentially interfere with his control over the enslaved personnel. It wouldn't free them permanently, but it might create a window of opportunity. How long would you need? Kirk asked. To reconfigure the Enterprise's main deflector array for broad-spectrum neural disruption? Approximately 15 minutes. And once activated, how long would the disruption last? Unknown. Darkseid has demonstrated adaptability. I estimate between 2 and 5 minutes before he compensates, assuming it works at all. Kirk looked between Spock's logical calculation and Chala's warrior determination. Every instinct screamed that this was too dangerous, that they needed more time to plan, to prepare. But Darkseid was transforming Federation citizens into weapons, and every moment delayed meant more people converted. Do it, Kirk decided. Spock, you have 10 minutes to modify the deflector. Chala, you'll beam over with a security team. Your objective is to reach the command center and physically disconnect Darkseid from the station's power systems. If we can cut off his energy source while hitting him with the neural disruption, we might have a chance. And if the disruption doesn't work? Chala asked. Then you get out of there immediately. That's an order. I'm not losing you to prove a point. Chala's expression softened slightly. You're beginning to sound like a king yourself, Captain. Caring more about your people than the mission. The people are the mission, Kirk said simply. They always have been. On the view screen, Darkseid watched this exchange with amusement. How touching. The captain and the king, bonding over shared nobility. But nobility without power is just performance art. He gestured, and another officer stepped forward for transformation. You have 10 of your minutes to decide, Kirk. After that, I begin converting them in batches of 50. By the time I'm finished, Starbase 12 will be the first outpost of my new empire, crewed entirely by beings who worship me as their god and possess the power to spread that worship by force. The transmission cut out. Kirk activated ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. We are engaging a hostile force that has taken control of Starbase 12. Our goal is to free the station's personnel without casualties. This will require precision, timing, and courage. Mr. Scott, I need every ounce of power you can channel to the deflector array. All security teams, report to Transporter Room 1 for mission briefing. Bridge crew, begin tactical analysis of the Starbase's defensive systems. I want to know every way in and out of that facility. We have 9 minutes to save 3,000 lives. Let's not waste them. Chala moved toward the turbolift, then paused. Captain? Thank you for trusting me. In my world, I fought alongside heroes who believed in protecting people above all else. I see that same spirit in you and your crew. Wakanda would be honored to call the Federation allies. Survive this first, Kirk said. Then we'll discuss long-term alliances over Saurian brandy. A worthy goal, Chala said, and his mask deployed as he headed for the transporter room. Kirk watched him go, then turned to the view screen showing the dark, silent starbase. Somewhere in there, Darkseid was waiting, confident in his power, certain of his victory. But he'd made a mistake. He challenged the Enterprise crew, threatened their people, and underestimated what desperation and ingenuity could accomplish when combined with Vibranium and Vulcan science. Mr. Sulu, bring us to within transporter range. Yellow alert, shields up, weapons ready. Kirk settled into the command chair, feeling the weight of command settle with him. Let's show a god what happens when he picks the wrong fight. The transporter beam deposited Chala and 6 security officers in an auxiliary corridor on Starbase 12's lower deck. Emergency lighting cast everything in crimson shadows, and the air tasted of ozone and something else, a metallic tang that Chala recognized from Apokolips. Fear, processed to advanced technology and turned into atmospheric residue. Lieutenant Commander Jado, leading the security team, consulted his tricorder. Command center is 17 decks up, sir. No life signs in our immediate vicinity, but I'm reading massive energy fluctuations throughout the station. Whatever Darkseid's doing, it's drawing power from every system simultaneously. Then we move fast before he drains it dry. Chala activated his suit's enhanced sensors, overlaying Federation technology with Wakandan analysis protocols. The Vibranium we've picked up energy signatures Starfleet equipment missed. Subtle distortions in local spacetime, microscopic tears in reality where new god physics leaked through. He's not just controlling minds. He's rewriting the station's fundamental structure to accommodate his presence. This facility is becoming an extension of Apokolips itself. They moved through corridors that should have been bustling with activity but were now tomb silent. Occasionally they glimpsed station personnel standing motionless at their posts, eyes vacant, hands frozen mid-task. When Chala passed close enough to scan one, a Vulcan science officer, his suit's medical sensors showed neural patterns that made his stomach turn. The woman's individual identity was still there, buried beneath layers of imposed programming, screaming silently inside a prison of rewritten synapses. Can they be saved? Jado asked quietly, seeing Chala's expression. I don't know. In my world, we encountered victims of mind control before, technological, psionic, magical. Most could be restored, but some. Chala's jaw tightened. Some were too far gone. The person they'd been was erased so completely that restoration would have left them empty. Better to let them continue in their altered state than condemn them to a living death. That's not a choice we're going to make today, Jado said firmly. We get them out, we let Dr. McCoy and Starfleet Medical figure out the rest. They reached a maintenance shaft that would bypass the main corridors and provide access to the command center. Chala's vibranium claws made short work of the sealed hatch, and they began climbing through the station's infrastructure, past humming power conduits, through zero-G junctions, around massive data cores that pulsed with corrupted information. Halfway up, Jato's communicator chirped. Enterprise to landing party. The deflector modification is complete. We can activate neural disruption on your signal, but Captain Kirk advises you have no more than 3 minutes once we begin. Darkseid will adapt fast. Understood. Chala replied. We're 2 minutes from the command center. Stand by. They emerged into a corridor 1 level below their target, and finally encountered resistance. 6 station security officers stood guard outside the command center entrance, their eyes glowing faintly red, their movements precise and synchronized. They raised phasers in perfect unison. Stand down. Jato ordered, though he knew it was futile. We're Starfleet. You're Starfleet. We don't want to hurt you. The controlled officers fired without hesitation. Chala moved, his enhanced reflexes putting him between the security team and the phaser blasts. Vibranium absorbed the energy, his suit's systems converting it to kinetic force that made him faster, stronger. He crossed the distance in a blur, disarming the controlled officers with precisely calibrated strikes, hard enough to disable, gentle enough not to cause permanent injury. Impressive. A voice echoed through the corridor. Darkseid's voice, projected through the station's comm system. You restrain yourself even when fighting enemies, refusing to kill those who would gladly kill you. Such nobility. Such weakness. Chala ignored the taunt, gesturing for Jato's team to secure the unconscious officers. Enterprise, we're at the command center. Initiate neural disruption now. Acknowledged. Activating in 3, 2, 1. The Enterprise's modified deflector array pulsed, sending a broad-spectrum neural disruption wave through the starbase's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every controlled officer throughout the facility stumbled, their synchronized movements faltering, confusion flickering across their blank faces. Go! Chala hit the command center doors, his vibranium claws tearing through the emergency lock. The doors shrieked open, revealing the operations hub beyond. Darkseid stood at the center, surrounded by a dozen transformed officers, those he'd already enhanced with new god physiology. They were bigger now, stronger, their skin gray as stone, their eyes burning with crimson light. And behind Darkseid, connected to the station's main power core by pulsing energy conduits, was a device that shouldn't exist, a throne-like structure of dark metal and living circuitry, Apokolipsian technology grafted onto Federation engineering. The neural disruption, Darkseid said calmly, even as the controlled officers around him clutched their heads in pain. Clever. But temporary. I'm already compensating. His eyes blazed brighter, and the stumbling officers throughout the facility began to straighten, their confusion fading as his control reasserted itself. You have perhaps 90 seconds before I restore full command. What will you accomplish in that time? Chala didn't answer with words. He launched himself at the throne device, vibranium claws extended, aiming for the power conduits connecting it to the station's core. If he could sever Darkseid's energy source. The enhanced officers intercepted him mid-leap. They moved with coordination beyond human capability, each strike calculated to redirect his momentum, absorb his kinetic energy, neutralize his advantages. They'd been programmed with combat data, probably extracted from every martial arts database in Starfleet's archives. But they hadn't fought a Wakandan king. Chala twisted midair, using his suit's kinetic absorption to redirect his own momentum in ways that defied physics. He struck the floor at an angle, bounced, came up inside their defensive perimeter. His claws found the nearest conduit, and tore. Sparks erupted. Energy screamed. The throne device flickered, its power output dropping noticeably. Darkseid's expression shifted from amusement to annoyance. Enough. The Omega effect lanced out, not at Chala directly but at the floor beneath him. Tritanium plating vaporized, creating a chasm that dropped 3 decks. Chala fell, barely catching himself on an exposed beam, his suit's energy reserves depleting rapidly from the constant absorption and redirection. Jato's security team opened fire on the enhanced officers, their phasers set to maximum stun. It barely slowed them down. These weren't normal humans anymore. They were something between mortal and new god, strong enough to shrug off weapons that would drop a charging Klingon. 60 seconds, Darkseid announced conversationally. The neural disruption is failing faster than your Vulcan predicted. And when my control fully reasserts, every person on this station will resume their transformation. 3,000 new god soldiers, Captain Kirk. How will your Federation respond to that? Chala pulled himself up, his body aching despite the Vibranium's protection. He damaged one conduit, but the throne device had dozens more, and Darkseid was already rerouting power around the severed connection. They needed a new approach, something unexpected. His suit's sensors detected it first. A massive energy buildup, not from Darkseid but from external sources. Ships. Multiple ships, dropping out of warp at high speed. The viewscreen activated, showing space outside the starbase. The Enterprise hung in position, but it was no longer alone. 3 Klingon D-7 battle cruisers had arrived, their disruptors charging, their torpedo bays open. And on the main screen, Commander Kor's scarred face appeared, grinning with savage anticipation. Darkseid! Kor's voice boomed through every speaker on the station. You promised the Klingon Empire power and glory. You promised us partnership in conquest. But my intelligence officers have analyzed your methods, studied your pattern. You don't create partners, you create slaves. And the Klingon Empire kneels to no one. Darkseid's expression darkened. Foolish warrior. You cannot harm me with your primitive weapons. Perhaps not, Kor acknowledged. But we can certainly make things difficult. He looked off-screen, issuing orders in Klingon. All ships target the starbase power distribution network. Surgical strikes. Disable his energy source without destroying the station itself. And Darkseid? This is what you get for insulting Klingon honor with offers of servitude. We will not be your dogs. The Klingon ships fired, disruptor beams lancing through space with lethal precision. They struck the starbase external power relays, severing connections, overloading circuits. Inside the command center, the throne device screamed as its energy supply fluctuated wildly. Chala seized the opportunity. While Darkseid was distracted managing the external threat, while his enhanced soldiers turned toward the view screen in confusion, the Wakandan king moved. He reached the throne device and didn't try to damage it. Instead, he interfaced his Vibranium suit's systems directly with its alien technology. What are you doing? Darkseid demanded, turning back. Learning, Chala said through gritted teeth as data flooded his suit's processors. Apokolipsian science, new god energy patterns, the exact frequency Darkseid used to control minds and transform bodies. His suit absorbed it all, storing it, analyzing it. You wanted to study the Federation through these people's minds. I'm studying you through your own technology. Darkseid moved to stop him, but Jato's team positioned themselves in his path, phasers firing despite their ineffectiveness. It was a delaying action, buying seconds, and Chala made those seconds count. His suit found what it was looking for, the resonance frequency that Darkseid's control operated on. The specific energy signature that bridged new god power with Federation neurology. And Vibranium, by its nature, could absorb and redirect any energy it encountered. Enterprise, Chala said urgently. Lock transporters on every life sign aboard this station except Darkseid. Emergency beam out, maximum dispersal. Coordinate with the Klingon ships for additional capacity. Negative, Kirk's voice responded. We can't transport through the station's shields. The shields are dropping in 3, 2, 1. Chala triggered the command he'd found buried in the throne device systems. Starbase 12's defensive shields collapsed. Now, Enterprise! Golden light filled the command center as transporters from 4 ships activated simultaneously. 3,000 people vanished in cascading waves, pulled from Darkseid's grasp and scattered across multiple vessels where his influence couldn't immediately reach them. Darkseid roared, the Omega effect blazing to full intensity. But his targets were gone, his throne device offline, his carefully constructed stronghold reduced to an empty facility. Chala stood alone in the command center, facing a god's undiluted rage. "Clever," Darkseid said, his voice promising violence. "But futility remains futile. You've saved them temporarily. I will find them again. I will reclaim them. And you will serve as an example of what happens to those who defy Darkseid." The new god advanced, and Chala's suit registered energy levels that would overwhelm even Vibranium's absorption capacity. This was going to hurt. Chala Dove left as the Omega effect carved through the space he'd occupied a heartbeat before. The command center's bulkheads vaporized, exposing the level to vacuum, except Darkseid's presence created a localized atmosphere, bending physics to his will. The new god wasn't just powerful. He was becoming more integrated with this universe's physical laws with every passing moment. "Enterprise, I could use that emergency transport now," Chala said, rolling behind a destroyed console as another crimson blast reduced it to molecular dust. "Negative," Spock's voice carried frustration. "Darkseid is generating an interference field. We cannot establish a lock on your position without risking dispersing your pattern across several parsecs. Then I'll have to do this the hard way." Chala's suit had absorbed the throne device data, understood the resonance frequency Darkseid used to control and transform. Vibranium's unique properties meant it could not only absorb energy but redirect it, repurpose it. The question was whether he could weaponize that knowledge before Darkseid killed him. The new god moved with terrible patience, each step deliberate, knowing his prey had nowhere to run. "You fought well, Wakandan. Better than most mortals. But this ends as all such conflicts end, with the strong triumphant and the weak erased. In Wakanda," Chala said, his hands working frantically at his suit's controls, "we have a saying, the strength of the panther lies not in its claws, but in knowing when to strike." He triggered the sequence he'd been programming, and his suit's entire energy reserve, every joule of kinetic force it had absorbed during their battles, every phaser blast, every impact, discharged at once. But not as an attack. The Vibranium transformed that stored energy into a perfect counter-frequency to Darkseid's control signature. It pulsed outward through the station's remaining systems, through the communication arrays, through every piece of technology Darkseid had touched and corrupted. And because the new god had been drawing power from those systems, the feedback loop hit him directly. Darkseid staggered, actually staggered, as his own energy turned against him. The Omega effect sputtered and died. The gray pallor of his skin flickered, revealing something beneath. Cracks in his physical form, wounds from the dimensional crossing that he'd been hiding through force of will and stolen power. "Impossible," Darkseid growled, but Chala heard the uncertainty beneath the rage. "Not impossible. Precise." Chala's suit was depleted now, its energy reserves empty, but he'd bought the opening he needed. "You adapted to this universe, learned its rules, integrated its technology. But you forgot that adaptation works both ways. This universe can adapt to you too." The Klingon ships fired again, and this time their disruptor beams weren't targeting the station, they were targeting Darkseid directly. Weakened by the feedback loop, his defenses compromised, the new god actually had to dodge. The beams struck where he'd been standing, carving deep gouges in the deck plating. "Enterprise," Kirk's voice came through. "We've got transporter lock. Bringing you home." "Negative, Captain." Chala watched Darkseid recover, watched those terrible eyes refocus with renewed fury. "I'm not finished here. Chala, you're out of options. Your suit's depleted, and he's adapting to the disruption. Which is why I need to hit him now, while he's vulnerable." Chala reached into his suit's storage compartment and withdrew something he'd been saving for exactly this moment. A small sphere of pure vibranium, no larger than his fist. Part of his limited supply, but configured during his time in the Enterprise's engineering bay into something new. "Mr. Scott helped me build this. I believe he called it a wee present for our stone-faced friend. The sphere didn't look like much, But vibranium's properties meant that when exposed to specific energy frequencies Chala's suit had mapped from studying the throne device, it would create a resonance cascade. Not an explosion exactly. Something more sophisticated. A singularity of absorbed energy, collapsing into a point that would disrupt Omega effect physics at their fundamental level. Chala activated the device and threw it. Darkseid's eyes widened fractionally. Recognition, perhaps, or simply the survival instinct shared by all sentient beings when facing genuine danger. He raised his hands, the Omega effect blazing despite his weakened state, trying to vaporize the sphere before it reached him. But vibranium absorbed the Omega beams, fed on them, grew stronger from them. The sphere struck Darkseid's chest and detonated. The effect wasn't visible in traditional terms. There was no fire, no shockwave, no dramatic explosion. Instead, reality around Darkseid seemed to fold inward, drawn toward the vibranium's singularity. His Omega effect inverted, turning against him, trying to erase him from existence the way it had erased so many of his victims. The new god screamed, and the sound carried harmonics that shattered equipment across 3 decks. "Emergency transport, now!" Chala shouted, but the Enterprise was already pulling him out. Golden light enveloped him as the singularity's effects intensified, as Darkseid's form began to break down, as the fundamental structure of his being unraveled. Chala materialized on the Enterprise's transporter pad, collapsing immediately. Scotty caught him while McCoy rushed forward with medical scanners. "The station," Chala gasped. "Darkseid. The starbase is evacuating." Kirk's voice came from the transporter room's comm system. "The singularity is expanding. Spock calculates we have 90 seconds before it consumes the entire facility." "And Darkseid?" Silence. Then Spock's voice, clinically precise. "The entity designated Darkseid is adapting. The singularity is causing massive damage to his physical form, but he is using the station's remaining power to anchor himself to this reality. He will survive, though severely weakened." Chala tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. The suit's energy depletion had affected him more than he'd realized, or perhaps it was simply exhaustion catching up with him. "We have to finish this. If he survives, he won't survive here." Commander Kor's voice interrupted, patched through from the Klothos. "Klingon honor demands we see this through. All ships, concentrate fire on the starbase reactor core. We will deny Darkseid his anchor and his power source simultaneously." "Kor, wait," Kirk protested. "There might be another way." "There isn't, Captain. You've proven Darkseid can be hurt, that he bleeds like any other tyrant. That's all the High Council needed to see." Kor's grin was audible even through audio-only transmission. "The Klingon Empire does not ally with beings who enslave. We destroy them. Consider this our answer to his offer of partnership." The Klingon ships unleashed everything they had. Disruptors, photon torpedoes, even their emergency antimatter reserves. The combined firepower struck Starbase 12's reactor core with devastating precision. On the Enterprise's viewscreen, the starbase bloomed into a sphere of nuclear fire. The explosion was massive, controlled only by the fact that it occurred in vacuum where there was no atmosphere to propagate the shockwave. The facility that had stood for 20 years, that had been home to thousands, that represented Federation engineering excellence, became expanding debris and radiation. And somewhere in that conflagration, Darkseid burned. "Scan for his energy signature," Kirk ordered quietly. Spock worked his console for several long moments. "Negative, Captain. I am detecting no traces of the specific energy pattern associated with Darkseid. Either he was destroyed in the explosion or—" The Vulcan paused. "Or he has masked his signature beyond our sensor's ability to detect." Chala knew which option was more likely. Beings like Darkseid didn't die easily. They retreated, adapted, planned. The vibranium singularity had hurt him badly, perhaps worse than anything he'd experienced in centuries. But hurt wasn't dead. "He'll be back," Chala said, finally managing to stand with McCoy's assistance. Weaker, more cautious, but back. We've bought time, nothing more. Time is enough, Kirk said, entering the transporter room. His uniform was disheveled, his expression showing the strain of the past hours, but his eyes held determination. Time to prepare. Time to strengthen our defenses. Time to study what we've learned and develop better countermeasures. He extended his hand to Chala. You saved 3,000 lives today. Starfleet won't forget that. Chala accepted the handshake, feeling the genuine respect behind it. I had help. Without your crew's ingenuity, the Klingon firepower, and a significant amount of luck, we'd all be kneeling before Darkseid right now. The Klingon, McCoy muttered. Never thought I'd be grateful to Core for anything. I am transmitting tactical data to your ship. Core's voice came through again. Everything we recorded during the engagement, energy signatures, vulnerability points, adaptation patterns. Use it well, Kirk. The Empire has decided Darkseid represents a threat to our sovereignty. We will not ally with him. But neither will we formally ally with the Federation. A pause. However, if circumstances place Klingon and Starfleet forces in proximity when this new god appears again, we may find ourselves coincidentally shooting at the same target. Kirk smiled slightly. I appreciate the coincidence, Commander. The Federation is grateful for your independent tactical assessment. Save your gratitude. This wasn't altruism, it was pragmatism. Darkseid is a threat to all free peoples, and the Klingon Empire values freedom above all else. We will not kneel. We will not serve. We will fight. Core's tone shifted to something almost resembling respect. Your Wakandan king understands this. He fights with honor, uses his mind as well as his strength. The Empire recognizes a worthy warrior when we see one. Chala of Wakanda. May you die well when your time comes. May we both die old and satisfied, Commander. Chala responded, understanding the cultural weight of Core's words. The transmission ended, and the Klingon ships warped away, leaving the Enterprise alone among the debris of Starbase 12. Spock approached Chala. I must ask, the Vibranium singularity device. How did you know it would work? I didn't, Chala admitted. But in Wakanda, we have experience with Vibranium's unique properties. It absorbs all energy, but there are limits. Push it past those limits, and it doesn't explode. It implodes, creating a feedback loop that turns absorbed energy against its source. I gambled that Darkseid's Omega effect would trigger that cascade. A calculated risk based on incomplete data. Spock observed. Fascinating. And effective. Also expensive. Chala said quietly. That sphere represented a significant portion of my remaining Vibranium supply. I have perhaps enough left for my suit's maintenance, and one more such device. After that, he trailed off. Kirk understood. Chala was running out of resources, cut off from his homeland, fighting battles in a universe not his own with finite weapons. We'll help you however we can. Federation materials science, Vulcan metallurgy. Maybe we can synthesize something with similar properties. Maybe, Chala said, but his tone suggested he doubted it. Vibranium wasn't just rare, it was unique to his reality. Here, it might be irreplaceable. McCoy finished his medical scan. You're exhausted, dehydrated, and showing signs of neural stress from interfacing directly with that Apokolipsian technology. Prescribed treatment, food, water, sleep. In that order. Agreed, Chala said. The observation lounge on Deck 2 offered a view of stars that Chala had been staring at for the past hour. They were the same stars he'd seen from Wakanda. Same constellations, same patterns, but somehow different. This universe wore familiar shapes but spoke in an alien dialect, close enough to home to hurt, different enough to remind him that home might be forever beyond reach. Kirk entered quietly, carrying 2 glasses and a bottle of Saurian brandy. Mind some company? Not at all, Captain. Chala accepted the offered glass. This time he drank. The brandy burned pleasantly, grounding him in the physical moment. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching stars streak past at warp speed. Finally Kirk spoke. Starfleet Command reviewed our reports. The loss of Starbase 12 is significant. But they acknowledge that the alternative, Darkseid controlling 3,000 transformed soldiers, would have been catastrophic. You're being credited with saving lives and potentially preventing a much larger conflict. But not thanked for destroying a major Federation installation. Chala observed wryly. Politics. Kirk shrugged. Some admirals see the bigger picture. Others see budget reports and damage assessments. The important thing is that the people we saved are recovering. McCoy's working with Starfleet Medical to reverse the neurological conditioning. It's slow, delicate work, but preliminary results are promising. Most of them will make full recoveries. Most. Not all. No, Kirk admitted. Not all. Some were exposed to the transformation process too deeply. They'll need long-term care, possibly for the rest of their lives. He paused. But they're alive, and they have a chance. Without you, they wouldn't have even that. Chala set down his glass, his expression troubled. In Wakanda, I was taught that a king's duty is absolute: protect the people, preserve the nation, maintain the traditions that keep us strong. Everything I did had clear purpose, clear context. Here. He gestured at the stars. Here I don't even know if Wakanda exists. I'm fighting threats to a federation I barely understand, using resources I can't replace, making decisions that affect thousands of lives in a universe that isn't mine. Sounds familiar, Kirk said quietly. Every captain faces that. We're out here, light years from home, making calls that affect civilizations we've just met, with incomplete information and impossible choices. He refilled both glasses. The difference is we chose this. You were dragged into it by circumstance. And yet I stayed. I could have asked you to search for a way home, devoted all my energy to finding Wakanda across dimensional barriers. Instead, I'm hunting Darkseid. Chala looked at Kirk directly. Why is that? Why does a king abandon his kingdom to fight someone else's war? Kirk considered the question seriously. Because you're not just a king. You're a protector. And protectors protect, wherever they are, whoever needs it. The crown doesn't make you who you are, Chala. Your choices do. Before Chala could respond, the door chimed. Spock entered carrying a data pad and wearing an expression that suggested significant news. Gentlemen. I apologize for the interruption, but I have completed my analysis of the data Chala extracted from Darkseid's throne device. Spock set the pad on the table, his fingers calling up complex energy diagrams. The information is comprehensive: Apokolipsian technology, new god physics, dimensional mechanics. It represents a quantum leap in our understanding of advanced energy manipulation. But, Kirk prompted, hearing the unspoken caveat. But it also confirms our worst suspicions about Darkseid's intentions and capabilities. The throne device was not merely a control mechanism. It was a beacon. Spock highlighted a section of the data. Darkseid has been transmitting his energy signature back to his home dimension, specifically to Apokolips. He's calling reinforcements. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Chala leaned forward, studying the data with growing concern. How long until they arrive? Unknown. The dimensional barriers between our universes are substantial. Crossing them requires immense energy and specific alignment of cosmic phenomena. However, based on the transmission's power levels and frequency, I estimate Darkseid expects reinforcements within 6 to 18 months. Reinforcements, Kirk repeated. We're talking about more new gods? An army from Apokolips? Potentially. Spock confirmed. Though the data suggests Darkseid himself was weakened by the crossing. Full-power new gods may not be able to traverse the barrier. However, he could bring through lesser beings, parademons, hunger dogs, technological assets. Even diminished, an army from Apokolips would represent a threat the Federation is not currently equipped to handle. Chala stood, pacing to the viewport. Then we have 6 to 18 months to prepare. To find Darkseid's new hiding place, to develop better weapons, to forge alliances that can stand against what's coming. We also have another option, Kirk said slowly. We could use that same data to find a way to send you home. The dimensional mechanics Darkseid used to cross over, if we could reverse them, calibrate them to search for your specific universe. Chala turned, surprised. You'd help me leave? After everything, leave. I'd help you choose, Kirk interrupted. You've earned that much. If you want to search for Wakanda, we'll devote every resource we have to making it happen. If you want to stay and fight Darkseid, you'll have Starfleet's full support. But the choice has to be yours, not something circumstance forces on you. The offer hung in the air between them. Chala could see the sincerity in Kirk's eyes, the genuine desire to give him agency over his own fate. It was a gift, really, the kind of gift that leaders rarely received, the freedom to choose their own path. I need time to think, Chala said finally. Take it, Kirk said. We're headed to Starbase 6 for resupply and repairs. 3 days of travel, another 2 days docked. That should give you time to decide what comes next. Spock gathered his data pad. I should note that regardless of your decision, the information you obtained from the throne device has been invaluable. I have shared preliminary findings with Federation Science Council and have received authorization to continue research into countermeasures against new God energy signatures. Your contribution to Federation security cannot be overstated. After Spock departed, Kirk refilled their glasses one more time. For what it's worth, I hope you stay. Not because we need a warrior, though we do, but because I think you've found something here worth fighting for. Not Wakanda, not a kingdom, but something bigger. The principle that people everywhere deserve protection, that tyrants need to be stopped regardless of which universe they threaten. Spoken like someone who's never had a home to lose, Chala said, but there was no bitterness in it. Maybe. Or spoken like someone who's learned that home isn't always a place. Kirk stood. Get some rest. In 3 days, we'll talk about next steps, whatever you decide those should be. Alone again, Chala returned to the viewport. His reflection stared back at him against the backdrop of alien stars. A king without a kingdom, a warrior without a homeland, a man caught between the universe he'd lost and the universe that needed him. His communicator chirped. McCoy's voice came through. Chala, you awake? I've got one of the Starbase 12 survivors asking to speak with you. Young woman named Ensign Marissa Flores. She was one of the first Darkseid tried to transform. Says she remembers you pulling her out of the command center. I'll be right there. Sickbay was quiet at this hour, most of the Starbase 12 survivors sleeping peacefully for the first time since their ordeal. McCoy led Chala to a private recovery room where a young woman sat propped up in bed, her eyes clear but haunted. Ensign Flores, Chala said gently. How are you feeling? Confused. Scared. Grateful. She managed a weak smile. Dr. McCoy says I'm one of the lucky ones. My exposure to Darkseid's control was brief enough that I should make a full recovery. But I remember things. Being in that command center, feeling my thoughts not being my own, watching him turn people into those creatures. I'm sorry you had to experience that. Don't be. You saved us. You and Captain Kirk and everyone on this ship. Flores met his eyes. I wanted to say thank you. And to tell you something I remembered while I was under his control. Darkseid, he was planning something. Not just transforming us. He was searching for something specific in our minds, in Starfleet's databases. Information about dimensional research, about experimental technology that could. She stopped, wincing. McCoy stepped forward with a hypospray, easing her pain. What technology? Chala asked urgently. Something called the Guardian of Forever. He kept asking about it, searching through classified files, trying to find its location. Floris's eyes were already drooping from the sedative. I don't know what it is, but he wanted it badly. Said it was the key to bringing his full power across. She drifted into sleep. Chala looked at McCoy, who shook his head. I don't know what that is either. Sounds like something above my pay grade. Chala returned to the observation lounge and activated the communications panel. Chala to Captain Kirk. Kirk here. What's wrong? We need to talk. I've decided what comes next. The Guardian of Forever stood on a barren planet at the edge of explored space, a portal through time itself, its significance known only to the highest levels of Starfleet command. Kirk had encountered it once before, and the experience had taught him that some technologies were too powerful for any single being to control. If Darkseid found it, if he used it to reach back through time and bring his full strength across dimensional barriers before he'd been weakened. Chala stood before Kirk in the captain's quarters, his decision made. I'm staying. Not because I've given up on finding Wakanda, but because I understand what's at stake. Darkseid won't stop with the Federation. He'll spread across this entire universe, dimension by dimension if he can. And if he gets his hands on time travel technology, he could prevent his own weakening, arrive here at full power. Then we find him first. Kirk said. We use what we learned at Starbase 12, track his energy signature, and we end this before his reinforcements arrive. Spock entered, summoned by Kirk's earlier message. I have located 3 potential sites where Darkseid might attempt to recover his strength. Each is near significant energy sources, nebulas, quasars, spatial anomalies. However, there is a 4th location that concerns me more. He brought up a star chart. A classified research station studying dimensional mechanics. If Darkseid has accessed Starfleet databases, he knows about it. Set course, Kirk ordered. Maximum warp. And Mr. Spock, prepare a message to Starfleet Command. Tell them we need every available ship in this sector on standby. If we're right about Darkseid's plans, this stops being the Enterprise's mission and becomes a matter of galactic security. Chala moved to the viewport one last time, looking out at stars that had become familiar over these past weeks. Somewhere out there, Darkseid was planning his next move, recovering from the wounds they'd inflicted, adapting to this universe's rules while plotting to break them. The new god had learned that this reality could hurt him, but he'd also learned that it could be conquered with patience and strategy. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated what happened when a Federation captain's principles met a Wakandan king's determination. He'd assumed that because they valued life, they'd hesitate. That because they preferred diplomacy, they'd be weak when violence became necessary. In the reflection on the viewport, Chala saw not just himself but Kirk and Spock standing behind him, 3 different philosophies united by a single truth. Some threats couldn't be reasoned with or wished away. They had to be fought with intelligence, courage, and the willingness to sacrifice. When we find him, Chala said quietly, the Vibranium weapon I use has to count. I have enough for 1 more singularity device, maybe 2 if we're conservative. After that, I'm fighting with skill and determination alone. Then we make sure those devices count, Kirk said. And we remember what you taught us, precision over power. We don't try to overpower Darkseid. We outthink him. McCoy's voice came over the comm. Jim, the Starbase 12 survivors are asking about Chala. They want to know if he's staying with the ship. I think they feel safer knowing he's around. Kirk looked at Chala with a slight smile. What should I tell them? Chala touched the panther emblem on his chest, the symbol of Wakanda, of everything he'd been and everything he'd left behind. But symbols didn't define duty. Actions did. Tell them the Black Panther protects all who need protection, regardless of universe. And tell them we're going to stop the being who hurt them, permanently. The Enterprise leaped to warp, carrying its crew toward an uncertain confrontation with a wounded god who wouldn't stay wounded for long. Behind them, space folded back to normal, stars resumed their ancient patterns, and the universe continued its eternal indifference to the struggles of those who lived within it. But for Chala, there was no indifference. There was purpose. He'd lost his kingdom, lost his world, lost everything that had defined him. Yet in losing everything, he'd discovered something unexpected, that the principles he'd lived by in Wakanda weren't bound to a single nation or reality. They were universal: protect the innocent, oppose tyranny, fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Darkseid had called him a king without a kingdom. Perhaps that was true. But a king without a kingdom could become something more dangerous to tyrants everywhere: a protector without borders, loyal to principle rather than territory. Kirk had offered him a choice: search for home or fight for this universe. Chala had chosen both. He would fight Darkseid, stop his plans, prevent the invasion from Apokolips. And in doing so, he would honor everything Wakanda had taught him about duty, sacrifice, and the responsibility of power. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but it had gained a new defender. Not because Chala wanted glory or recognition, but because standing aside while others suffered had never been the Wakandan way. Whether in his universe or this one, a panther protected its territory. And this galaxy, strange and familiar in equal measure, had just become his territory to defend. In the depths of space, on a world shrouded in darkness and radiation, Darkseid watched his wounds heal slowly, painfully. The Vibranium had hurt him worse than anything in millennia, the feedback loops still echoing through his cellular structure. But pain was temporary. Defeat was merely data. He had underestimated these primitives, their resourcefulness, their ability to adapt and coordinate. He would not make that mistake again. The beacon to Apokolips continued transmitting. His forces would come, weakened by dimensional crossing but still formidable. And this time, he would be ready for Wakandan kings and Starfleet captains alike. The universe had challenged Darkseid. Now Darkseid would answer that challenge with the full weight of his empire's fury. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. Live long and prosper. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories. Thank you for watching.